Hello everybody, how's everybody doing? I hope you're doing fine. The virus didn't catch you. First I want to say that we postponed the Lusaka conference that we were supposed to have in April. For some reason Lusaka is the only country in the world that locked its borders, won't let people out or in. I don't know what's going on over there, so we got to wait till the Zambian authorities open their borders again. We don't know when that'll happen. Okay, so yeah, we postponed the conference, and we're going to have to reschedule it. We don't know yet what's going to happen at all in the world. Okay, I just want to remind also people, everybody there, that we have the Rope Hypothesis, the book. It's up there for you to download at ropehypothesis.com. Okay, you can go into books and you will find a PDF file that you can download. It's for free. It puts you up to date. It brings you up to speed on what this site is about. Okay, and I also want to mention that anyone who has a second language and wants to translate the book to his second language, please contact us at tokakaka@hotmail.com, and we'll send you a file that you can work with to translate it into your native language. Anyways, what am I going to talk about today? Well, I want to talk a little bit about this issue of the virus that's going on in the world. Why? Because I have an extinction theory. For those of you who are not aware, I've been talking about it for the last 20 years, and I think this virus may have something to do with that extinction theory. Maybe, I don't know. That's what I'm going to try to find out myself. But the issue is that I'm going to talk about the extinction theory and how it relates perhaps to the virus, or how the virus might trigger what I proposed 20 years ago. And if I have time, I'm going to deal with some of the comments regarding wave theory that we dealt with a couple sessions ago. Anyways, one of the problems that I've got is people don't seem to understand what the theory is about. And they're putting words in my mouth or misunderstanding the theory, misrepresenting it. And therefore this forces me to clarify the theory for, I guess, the 10th time. Maybe someone will listen out there and figure out what the theory is about. The theory is about extinction, but the mechanism, no one seems to grasp it, or very few people seem to grasp it. And I got a person who was aware of the theory. He sent an article, and the article is about this fellow in England who wrote a book, published I think now in March, and he talks about food. Okay, and that's right down my alley because it's a food theory. And this guy talks about the food situation in England, okay, in the UK. And he goes over some of the problems that the UK has with food, or with food policy. And this fellow put this article there like saying, Jesus, you know, if this guy's right, then maybe Bill's theory might be true. And the issue is that what this guy says, this author, has absolutely nothing to do with my theory. And so someone's got it wrong, and I want to clarify that the theory has nothing to do with what you'll hear from these people, from this author. Okay, so let me show you the author first. Okay, and here it is. This fellow, Tim Lang, and he says we have a massively fragile just-in-time supply chain, which could easily collapse. Okay, and he says that in Britain, the agricultural sector produces around 50% of the food that we actually eat, and he's complaining that essentially the UK is relying on imports. Too much of its food source comes from abroad, and that just 8 companies control the 90% of the food supply. Okay, and so that's essentially his argument. And I just want to clarify that none of this has anything to do with my theory, okay? None of what this person just said there has anything to do with the theory. Now, it has to do with England and its ability to overcome some kind of catastrophe out there where it somehow is isolated from all these supplies that come from abroad. That's a separate issue. But that's not what my theory says, okay? So I want to make sure that's understood, okay? What I do like about him, let me put this up again, is the last statement that he made in there, which is this one. He says, we have a default position of assuming someone else will feed us. Oh, I love that one. I love that one because he wasn't aware of what he said. You know, that statement, someone else will feed us, applies to every person on earth, essentially. Maybe there's some hunter-gatherers, he feeds himself, but every one of us depends on someone else to feed us. See, that wasn't the case with basal hunter-gatherers of the Upper Paleolithic, and it's certainly not the same for, you know, for the few hunter-gatherers that are out there that maybe hunt some animal and feed off of that, you know. Everybody else in the world essentially depends on someone else feeding them. And we're not aware of that. See, we think that you just go to a store and get something, you're not even conscious of this, and it turns out, yeah, we depend on other people to feed us. Keep that in mind, okay? We depend on others to feed us, and without feeding, we're dead. That sounds like extinction, at least for the individual. Okay, and out of that article, it referenced another article as well. And this article said, again, analyzes the food situation, again, in England or in the UK. And again, talks about, says, we now produce 60%, but because of exports, only about 50% of the food we eat is actually produced here. That's in the UK, right? And this means we are now at a risk from global shocks, including exceptional weather. And what are they put next? Disease, which is what we're having today, war, disturbances in commodity markets, etc. So, why doesn't any of that have to do with the theory? My theory. My theory says one thing that you got to get clear right up front. If you don't understand that, there's no reason in pursuing in going any further with questions or comments or beliefs or whatever. You have to understand the bottom line. The bottom line is money will disappear. Money will be no more. That's the theory. Now, if you find anyone on planet Earth today, present today, or ever in the history of life on earth, that said money will disappear, I'll buy you a beer. Okay, there is no such theory out there. You can look in the Wikipedia, you can look in the, in blogs or whatever, experts from the universities. You will not find a single person saying that money will disappear, money will be no more. Okay, I want to get that straight because that goes into one ear and come out the other, and people just keep blabbing about stuff that I haven't said. I said money will disappear. Now, I don't know how difficult that can be for people to understand. Money will disappear. Now, you might say, well, I don't believe that money will disappear. That's what 99.99% of humanity says. I don't care. I want you to understand that that's the theory. The theory that I'm proposing, money will disappear. Okay, so whether you believe in it, or you might say, well, how will it disappear? Again, right now it's irrelevant. Right now we can't even get you to say the prayer, money will disappear. Okay, that's the theory. The theory says money will disappear. And so that's the first thing you need to get clear. Unless you understand it, you will not understand anything else, because you'll say, a lot of people say, well, yeah, Bill's right. You know, the climate is changing. And that's going to affect our food production. Or we don't have enough land on planet Earth to feed, 8 billion people. Or we're running out of water, or maybe out of fuel to power all these things. They come up with a bunch of stuff that has nothing to do with my theory. The theory is money will disappear. Money will be no more. Okay, I hope that's clear. And yeah, if you look at the paper, which I've got there in the description, there's two papers there. You look at the one that says, we are the last generation of humans on Earth. It'll give you an idea of, just a very vague idea, very broad idea of what I'm referring to. I'm saying that money will be no more, okay? So, when you cut the chain of money, see right now we have a chain, and it's all connect. That chain is money that connects all aspects of our global economy. The producer of food, right? The agriculturalist, he or the company, the corporation, sells to a transportation company, or might even be the transportation company, the way they're monopolizing every aspect of agriculture today. So it goes to the producer, the guy who manufactures food or packages it or processes it in some way. From there, it goes again through transportation to the stores. Okay, and from the stores, it goes to the consumer, and the consumer is the guy who works at the agricultural corporation. Some of them at least, right? And so it goes all around. All that's connected by a chain called money. It only works because of money, the whole chain, the whole cycle. You cut the chain, you get rid of money, and nothing works anymore. Okay? That's the theory. The theory says, if money disappears, for whatever reason, God comes in there and just waves his magic wand, there's no more money, nobody believes in money anymore, nobody accepts money anymore. Okay? Are you following me? If money disappears completely, for whatever reason, the devil put his tail in there, I don't care. Point is, if money disappears, right, that whole cycle disintegrates completely. Now you have what I call the chain of faith. We have to pray for our food because someone else feeds us. We depend on someone else to feed us. Okay, right now the agricultural, if money collapses, right, money disappears, corporation that produces the food, that plant, the agricultural corporation, will not accept money, right, from the transportation or the manufacturing company, okay, because money is no more, right? They don't accept money anymore. And the corporation that manufactures or processes food won't accept money from the supermarkets. Supermarkets won't accept money from the consumer, and the consumer won't accept salary from the corporation. The whole cycle breaks down if we can get rid of money. So if God comes here, after so many thousands of years, 7,000 years, I think it was, and waves his magic wand, and somehow, instead of making it rain for 40 days and 40 nights, just gets rid of money, we're done. The whole system breaks down, and without money, we can't get any food, and without food, we all die. That's a biological fact, okay? So that's the theory. The theory is money disappears, okay? If you stray from there and say, well, the climate and peak oil and all these other factors, nothing to do with it. Absolutely nothing to do with it at all, okay? Money will disappear. That's the theory. You need to get that part straight in there, okay? I talked about the other day about some of the macro processes that we cannot avoid, okay? These are macro processes that were predictable in retrospect, which we could not have avoided, and we cannot avoid even now if we go forward, okay? And let's see if I can get it here. I don't know why it doesn't show up. Ha ha. What is going on here? Somehow I can't get one of these things to show up. I see it, but I know that you're not seeing it. So I'm not sure what happened here. See if I can get another one of these up there. Oh yeah, that one shows up. Not sure what happened here. Okay, anyways, there's some macro process. I'll just have to read it to you because I don't know why I can't get you to see it. That is magic. Anyways, I'll just read them out to you. One is transition from country to the city. That's been going on for some time now. Okay, across the world, across the planet, people are moving from the country to the city, from the farmlands to the metropolitan areas. They're looking for work. The land is being bought out by agricultural corporations, and now they have these economies of scale where they process food on a grand scale and they get rid of the little farmer. That's a process that's going on across the planet. Every country on the planet is doing that, essentially. So we're moving from agricultural manufacturing to services. You know, there was a process. We started in the Neolithic, and where we invented or discovered agriculture, and from there we moved on to manufacturing. Eventually we started trading, and from there we became more and more efficient at manufacturing, and eventually moved people out of manufacturing and into services. And one of the things, you know, some people say, well, you know, services is good. It means we have very low unemployment thanks to the fact we have all these people working here and there and everywhere. And what they miss is that services is, for the most part, unemployment. Okay, services is an unemployment category, essentially. You look at finance, 20% of the U.S. economy, at least, is finance, including banking and insurance and so on. And if you credit, you know, and if you look at that, you know, it's all promises. Finance is all, for the most part, is promises. It's a different kind of service than a person who mows your lawn or cuts your hair. You know, you have an immediate benefit. Services of the financial kind is futuristic. You know, if you don't use insurance and you pay for it, and maybe you never use insurance in your life, and then you die, you know, you paid for nothing. You paid for a promise. And so you got to think about that. A lot of that is masked unemployment. Okay, someone said, oh, we have more people working today. Yeah, but they're working in the service industry, and services is, for the most part, unemployment. So, and if we add to that the fact that people are making lower wages today, real wages, that's also a way of masking unemployment. So unemployment is a weird word. Okay, it's got many categories. In fact, there's I think 6 types of unemployment that the government always ponders and analyzes. Then we have the other issue, the demographic pyramid overturning. That was unavoidable. The species, our species, is growing older and older and older. We are an old species. People say, well, we've been around for only 200,000 years. Yeah, Mother Nature doesn't count the age of a species by the number of rotations of the Earth around the sun. Mother Nature counts it by whether we have lost our genetic diversity, which humans have, and by whether the majority of the population is over the hill. That's when a species is old. Okay, and that's where we are today. And that's why, you know, our birth rates have gone down and are heading towards zero population growth. In other words, we're not producing kids anymore. Partly in great measure because we moved to the cities and you can't have kids in the cities. So it's all intertwined. Okay, so we could not have avoided this. And if you look at just a piece of bread that you put on the table, leave it for a month or so, until it turns green, the bacteria will multiply first, and then at some point they'll stop reproducing. Miracle. It's called density-dependent birth rates. That's what humans are subjected to today, density-dependent birth rates. We do not produce kids because we have too much density and too little economics, and we're all crowded in cities. That's why we stopped having kids, okay? Anyways, employment bottlenecks, unavoidable also. The old stay in their jobs, the young can't get in there, okay? Innovation, efficiency, it was predictable that we would have put new inventions, primarily innovations, in the workforce apply computers, etc., to make things more efficient. And what that does is, weed out the worker. We don't need workers anymore, okay, or ever fewer and fewer of them. Entitlements, unavoidable, Social Security, welfare, unemployment, health insurance, all those entitlements, the government has to pay for those. And what does that do? Governments incur debt as a result of that, okay? It's unavoidable. So government runs up the tab because they have to pay for these entitlements, which are included in the law, okay? You're entitled to certain benefits, and the government has to pay for that, and that's paid for from the workers that work. They take a little bit out of their paycheck. From there they pay the people who don't work or who need health or whatever, retirement. Currency devaluation, okay? What we have is government creating money, okay? And when government creates money, it automatically is lowering your salary. Unless there's an increase in your salary proportionate to the money created by the government, you just lost some money, okay? And real wages have been falling. In fact, here I have a little chart. Hopefully this one shows up, okay? And you can see what's happened to the real wages of workers in the last, 40, 50, 60 years, okay, since 1948. Okay, you can see that we were pretty much doing, at least the U.S., right? This is for the U.S., but it gives you an idea. It was productivity and hourly compensation were pretty much hand-to-hand all the way until 73, and then they started separating. Now we have a lot of productivity, but that doesn't show up in your paycheck, okay? And so workers are making less and less real wages. That's what it comes down to, okay? Okay, and again, let me look at one final couple more here. The stock market volatility, the fact that we have all these bubbles. We had a housing bubble in 2008. We have a derivatives bubble coming up maybe. A lot of casino playing by the banks. Okay, that could pop any moment. And then we have finally the fact that all food is being concentrated by a few corporations, which is what this English guy was saying, that you have very few agricultural corporations or food corporations because they do the transportation as well, processing some of them. And what they do is they have very few corporations doing the whole work. And that puts our lives in the hands of very few corporations. That's what you got to think about. So all these were unavoidable macro processes, and they were predictable, okay? And I think all that points to the fact that we are going to hit a brick wall at some point with the economy. We cannot continue growing forever, especially population doesn't grow, which means demand doesn't grow. And I know a lot of people out there say, well, you're crazy. Well, that's my take on it. I'm saying that you cannot replace quantity with quality. You cannot say, well, we make new products and people want to have new products and blah, blah, blah. Well, I don't buy any of that nonsense. No, it's a volume issue. If you want the world economy to grow, very simple. You have 1 trillion Martians put orders to Earth for all kinds of products, and you'll see us booming like you've never seen it before. You'll see factories running at full speed, hiring workers just to produce for the 1 trillion Martians. So yeah, numbers are important, okay? Volume is important. And that happened in the 19th century when population was expanding, blowing up, and people were demanding products, and new inventions were coming online. So it was a very dynamic era. That's not the era we have today at all. Okay, so we have a different situation today. Anyways, if you go back in time, the question is whether any of this is going to go like in Weimar Republic, Germany. I put some clips here just so that you can see. This is what happened to the mark. Okay, the marks in circulation versus prices. You can see what happened in the 1920s. These are the curves, okay? And what happened was that the money devaluated so much that it became worthless, essentially. People were using marks to, Deutschmarks, right, to heat their stoves because it was cheaper than buying coal, I guess. Okay? And my grandmother was German, and she was there in 1923. She left Germany in that year, and she said it was incredible. You had to take like 1,000,000 marks or whatever to buy a piece of bread. It was just unbelievable. And yeah, here's a cartoon that pretty much puts it in perspective. Again, price is out of control again. And so you can see the person taking tons of bills just to buy, who knows, a loaf of bread or whatever, apples. And it just kept growing. Here these guys are putting all kinds of bills in there, just to buy something. And the question is whether this is going to happen again. And I asked some Germans here in Germany whether anything like this could ever happen again in Germany. They just shake their heads and laugh at me. They said, what do you think, this is going to happen again? Are you crazy or what? And now we have lockdowns here in Germany. So you tell me if anything can happen. And I'll tell you, yeah, anything can happen. That's the best way to see it. So what happens when the economy reaches problems like we have today, where you have a virus that locked us all in? Here in Hessen, where I'm at, this state does not have a lockdown. It just has a voluntary, keep your distance policy. Okay, but in the south, in Bavaria and other states that are bordering with Switzerland and France, they're on lockdown. They've got the Gestapo and the SS, all of them, the Schutzstaffel, on the streets, okay, guarding, your health, okay? And so this is what would happen. First you have, when you have a crash of some kind, you have people first marching in the streets, protesting the cost of living. They first march through Main Street, then they march all the way to the Capitol or the legislature or the Congress or whatever of their city or their country. It starts peaceful, okay? And then it gets less and less peaceful for some reason, okay? We get to Pitchfork Day, okay? That's when the workers of the world unite, and they start confronting the police a little more determined. Second time, and now it's no longer a peaceful march. Now they come in and they demand certain things, and yeah, you have the crowds meeting up with the police, okay? And you might say, well, that doesn't happen anymore, especially in an advanced country like Germany. Can't imagine happening here. United States, China, under communism, maybe Russia, I don't know. Will it happen in these countries? In these countries that are so overly controlled, will people really go out there? Well, it depends on how desperate they are. I mean, if you're starving and somehow food rations are not enough, or the food doesn't get to you, you're in the so-called state of siege. Well, yeah, anything can happen. And one of the things that can happen is what you just saw. And this is what happened in Germany right after the war. You had all kinds of people, rioting and complaining and protesting and whatever. And you had millions of people in the streets, just demanding their share of the wealth. And so, yeah, there are marches, and those marches can become violent. And when you have that kind of thing, it's a different kind of world than the one you're used to. A lot of people today are not aware that this even happened. A lot of people are saying, well, it'll never happen again, those who are aware. And so the question is, is this going to happen again? Does it have any chance whatsoever in your mind? Okay? Here's one of the things which is iconic for the 1920s, okay? These are the soup kitchens. Will this ever happen again? Where you have, all these laid-off workers, welfare people, retirees, and etc., and they come in for just a plate of soup, okay? And yeah, and they date heartily, and the government has to pay for this, or you know, it's done through donations or whatever. You got to line up on the streets just to eat a plate of food. Do you think this will ever happen again, especially in an advanced nation? Or is this beyond reason, thinking that this will never happen again? You got to think about all these things, because right now, in many places right now, there's lockdowns. Cities, countries, there's lockdowns. And they say 2 weeks, maybe a month and a half, fine. And it's very likely that we'll get back to normal after that, whatever normal is, okay? But you got to keep in mind that normal is no longer normal. First of all, this is not normal. This is totally unprecedented. And second, even when it blows over, the virus, and everybody's allowed to get out of their houses because the danger is now no longer that dire, okay? Will the economy be back to normal? I mean, you know, you have lots of unemployed people, and can you get them back to their jobs? Will there be jobs to hire these people back? And when you have millions of workers out into the streets, well, you're approaching more a soup kitchen and riot type scenario than you are a normality. So the problem is not the virus. The problem is the economy. Okay, that's what I think you should keep in mind. And here's what happened in Argentina. You know, in 2001, they broke into stores, crowbars, whatever, and they stole everything they could, food from the shelves. Did they pay for all that stuff? Well, I don't think so, okay? They just broke in there, okay, and stole whatever they could, okay? A lot of them are opportunists, you know, maybe there was no need, but that's what people will do when there's riots, when there's loosening of the conditions in the country. If people are having trouble getting to the end of the month, they don't care. They'll go in there and rob a store. And you know, there was this Chinese guy I knew. He had a store, and he said he couldn't believe that neighbors that would say hi every morning to him would come in there and steal from his store right in front of his eyes, just steal whatever they could and run out. And these were people he knew in his zone. So yeah, I mean, sometimes you can't believe how people will change overnight because of necessity. You can say that they're just opportunists, but there is an element of necessity that drives people to do these things. And if there is lawlessness, and maybe the cops are not around, or maybe the cops even help you, like in the Russian Revolution, where the cops went in there and they didn't worry about security. They went in there to get their bag of flour. Yeah, then you got a problem. You got a problem in the country. And yeah, a lot of people might say, well, Bill, see, we had all these problems. We had a problem in Germany, another one in Russia, and we always overcame it. Yeah, but see, this is the issue. The issue is now we're talking global. See, when Russia had a problem, when Germany had a problem, there were other countries that weren't doing as bad. And, you know, have countries that sell to other countries to get them out of the mess for a little while. You know, the United States, England were helping Russia against Germany during the war. There were other countries, you know, helping Germany and so on, you know, after the war and so on. So as long as one country can help another country, no problem. But what if the whole world is a country, all connected by ships and airplanes which deliver goods and services, etc., and suddenly that system breaks down? Well, now you have the whole world. Who's going to help us? The Martians? It's a closed system then, okay? What you had in the 1920s, 1930s, and 1940s was not a closed system. You had one system that had problems, and another one helped them out. Emergency help or whatever. You know, you had the Marshall Plan also, you know, after the war. You had that because someone was rich and someone was poor. Someone was in need, the other one had what this guy needed, and so they reached an agreement. But what if the entire planet is a country, which is more or less the situation here, where the whole world depends on the whole world, where the dollar, for example, is what people use in the world, and suddenly that dollar collapses. Now you got a problem, because now you need the Martians to come in and help bail you out. And people don't always understand that the situation today is very different than what we had before, during the war, and even before the war, during the Depression era. Okay, and so what happens when things get real bad in your township, in your ghetto? You might run out of supplies. Maybe there's not enough water. Maybe electricity is shut down or something. And so the army or the National Guard or some government military force comes in and says, okay, folks, why don't you get into the trains? Okay, we're going to take you for a ride. Okay, and so they put people on the trains, and they start taking you to maybe a concentration camp, where they say, well, we can provide you there with food, water, electricity, whatever you need. Would you get on the train? Do you think that's a good decision? I mean, you either stay behind and starve or whatever, or have nothing to drink, or you go with the National Guard that promises to feed you and whatever until things get better. It's always until things get better, right? So it's your choice. You stay behind, or do you go? Okay, and you can go on trains. You can also go on trucks. This is the way they did it again in those days, before and after the war, right after the war. And you can see people loading onto the trucks. What if they come with a military trucks and say, you want to get on? Or even worse, they say, you must get on board. What would you do? Would you get on board that truck, or would you rather starve behind and take your chances at your home? Or would you rather go into the concentration camp, okay, and see if you survive in there better than outside? Can this ever happen again? Anything similar to that, where shortages become so dire that you have no other choice but either to get on the truck, or whether, even worse, maybe they force you onto the truck, okay? You got to think about these things if you think that any of this might happen again, okay? And yeah, at the camps, you have no problem. You have these guards. They'll put you straight. They'll make you stand up straight and salute, okay? You have your own medical services at your home, okay? This is what you might be seeing. You have your own bunk bed, hey, private bunk bed. You have your soup kitchen, all in one, all in the same place, okay? So yeah, you have guaranteed labor, the whole works. Why not? Why not get onto that truck, right? And yeah, here's the Auschwitz, the camp. Okay, it gives you an idea of what it looked like, and you might be put into some camp like that with thousands of people. Okay, would you get on that truck? Would you get on that train, or would you stay behind? Is the question. Do you think this will ever happen again? Is there any chance whatsoever in your mind that this could happen again? And you can imagine that. Just think about what you're looking at there. If money is no more, right? Big if, but if money is no more, well, all you have is food. All you need is food, and you need to get on the truck unless you have your own store somehow, you know, for I don't know how many years. So it's your choice. You either get on the truck or you don't. And the other possibility is that they force you onto the truck. Could happen, right? I mean, we don't know which one would happen. And if you get on the truck, or whether you stay behind, either way, money is no more. You got to think about that. Those people that went on the truck, they had no more money. Now they depended on someone else to feed them. And it's not like, you know, you're in a concentration camp. You don't go in there with money and say, okay, I'm going to buy something, because money has no value at that moment in time. Okay? So think about that. You know, at that point, money has no value. And if you stay behind, for sure, money has no value. So the question is, how can we reach that point? Is it possible to reach that point? Okay. That's the issue. Well, let's see if we're anywhere close to that. Here we have Goldman Sachs, okay? And this is what they say regarding the coronavirus. They say that second quarter coming up now, right? 85% of sports and entertainment loss, decline. 75% decline in transportation, 65% in hotel and restaurant, which already has suffered quite a bit. And they revised their 6% drop to 24% drop. Unprecedented. And maybe they're a little pessimistic, you might say. Okay, could be. Here's the several banks, including Goldman Sachs. These are their predictions or their proposals. They say that Goldman Sachs, you got that 24% there, decline. Credit Suisse says it's 12%, half of that. UBS, Switzerland Bank, minus 9.5. Barclays 7, and so on down the line. You can see that they have very different numbers. And this should give you an idea that these people have no idea whatsoever what's coming because they have such different numbers. And the interesting thing is that at quarter 3 and quarter 4, it's all pluses. So they say it's only going to last one quarter, and then we're back to normal, okay? Or more or less normal. We're going to start growing again. And you can see the percentages are all different for all these big corporations. And so the question is, are these people guessing? I mean, they're guessing as much as I am guessing, okay? Are their astrologers any better than me? And I recognize I'm a lousy astrologer, okay? I don't confuse science with astrology. And these people do astrology. They make all these predictions. They don't know if this is the last fall. Maybe it just keeps falling and falling and falling, okay? And I discussed that to some degree the other day. And here's one company, Barron's. Some of you have heard of them, okay? And they had their, like 10 of their experts give an idea what you should buy. And these people are buying, some people are buying toilet paper, these people buy stocks. If it falls far enough, they'll buy it. They think it's a good deal because they buy and then they wait for third quarter to come back up and they make a killing. And that's their hope, okay? The question is whether third quarter is going to go up or go further down. And you might say, well, Bill, it's got to go up because we all go, what, back to work? No, there are a lot of companies that are going to go bankrupt. And I'm not sure how much of that labor force is going to be hired back again. You know, you're going to have a loss of anywhere, according to Mr. Trump. In fact, I'll pull it up here in a second. He says, or his administration says that they think, right, they believe there's going to be like 20% unemployment rate due to coronavirus. Now, just to give you an idea, the 1929 stock market crash produced in the 30s a 22% unemployment rate. And so here they're talking about Depression era type situation. Okay, and the question is whether it's just going to last one quarter or it's going to go beyond. Because you got to think about something. Once people lose their jobs in certain types of industries, you know, those jobs are not created back again so swiftly because there's not enough demand for those services or goods and services. Maybe goods, but not services. Services is a luxury economy. You know, you pay the guy to mow your lawn. Now you got to mow it yourself, and so that guy lost his income, and so on. You know, so you get a lot of this stuff that you got to think about whether it's really going to pick up, and it might. I'm not saying it doesn't, but keep that in mind. 2 to 3 million people that lose their jobs. That's a big hit on the economy. And when they lose their jobs, they don't get them back overnight. It takes a while. And the question is whether in the meantime, instead of going up, it goes down, further down. And you have more unemployment because now you don't have enough demand. And that's why you need the $1 trillion stimulus, give money to people so that they can go out and spend it and stimulate the economy again, okay? It's an artificial trick that keeps us alive, you know, keeps us going. Okay? I talked about the chain reaction the other day. This is what I think happens in general. Okay, you have the coronavirus strike people, and what happens is governments and so on overreact perhaps, And because of that, you created this panic. And what happens now? Corporations lose their revenue, and workers lose their jobs, and consumers stop buying. And then the cycle repeats itself again, starting at corporations lose their revenue. And the only thing government can do is just give money to all these people and say, okay, we're going to give you money to keep you going. And that's about as much as they can do. That's it. Okay? Whether that's going to work in the long run, it's up to you to figure out, whether that's the case. Here I made a little illustration of what happens when more and more workers lose their jobs and have to maintain the few workers that remain have to maintain an ever-growing population of unemployed, of couch potatoes, okay? And here you see the little trick, how it goes. It's a little, it illustrates what's happening, okay, or what could happen. What you have is more and more people losing their jobs, okay, which is what's happening right now, and more couch potatoes on the right, okay? And you can't have this go on forever. At some point, you got to hire people back up because otherwise the entire economy collapses. And I'm saying that this process eventually is unavoidable because an economy can't grow forever. And it can't grow forever in great measure because we're not producing consumers. We're not producing children, okay? So, we have a Ponzi scheme. That's what our economy is like. Essentially, that's what it boils down to. You have to have more people, or like if you're a car company, you made your calculations that next year you're going to sell more cars. Why are you going to sell more cars? Well, because you have more people, and those people have money. And if you don't have more people, and the people who remain have less money, less disposable income, you're not going to sell more cars. You're going to have to lay people off from the assembly line and so on down the line. And then now you have more unemployed people clinging onto the system. And that's what that little gift showed. So this is what I think is going to happen. I think it's going to be a total economic collapse eventually, given enough time. I'm sorry I don't have any good news, but that's my take. That's what I think is going to happen. And why do I think it's going to happen? Also, if you put it in the context of mass extinctions. I'm saying all mass extinctions happened in the same way. They happened when the economy collapsed. The economy collapsed on the dinosaurs, okay? Their economy, all animals have an economy, and their economy is food. That's it. The economy of an animal is food. That's all an animal has to worry about in the wild, right? Has to worry about every day, day in, day out. Where's he going to get his food? Okay, especially the carnivores. The cows have it easy in general. They find it on the ground when there is, unless there's dry season. Then they die as well. But cows can eat their grass, and then someone eats the cow. That's the way it works. And when the bottom rung collapses, the primary production collapses, the whole system collapses. And that's what would happen to us if money disappears. If money disappears, for sure, there's no one to toil the land, no corporation that has any incentive to put seeds on the ground, okay? And when that happens, we're all in trouble because as long as we have money, no problem. But when money disappears, now we have a real problem. Now no one goes in there and plants, no one distributes, and the cities just starve to death. And that's what I think is going to happen, just like it happened to the dinosaurs. When their food sources disappeared, they died. No asteroid, no volcanoes, no supernovas. For sure. None of those can explain selectivity, especially chronological selectivity. Okay, I'm going to got a little time, so let me see if we can work on some of the comments that were made regarding the wave nature of light that we discussed the other day, especially amplitude, okay, is the speed of light. And this was one of the comments that was made. It says, hey, dude, you are wrong as usual, okay? You can produce standing wave with a free end. Just look at such and such, and gave me a reference, right? There is both example with free and with a fixed end, okay? So what did he point to? Well, he pointed to this, okay? This is my answer first. The only reason you can, because this is what I had said, and he just responded to this. I said, the only reason you can produce a standing wave, it's because it's got to be tied at both ends, okay? Okay, I said tied at both ends, but the issue was that, you know, if you don't hold the so-called wave, whatever is the thing that's waving, and I showed it with my, my rope, okay? If I don't hold it at one end, you know, I can't create the standing wave, okay? That's what I was saying. And he said, well, here we have a wave that is not held at both ends. And I had to see that. I see, what is he referring to, okay? And what he showed, or what he pointed to was this, okay? Okay, he says this wave, see, you can see it there. He says, see, it's not held at the other end. Yeah, but he's cheating. And he doesn't realize that he's got a bar, metal bar there underneath that's holding the whole thing up. If we take that bottom part out, can he do that same little trick if we don't have that supporting rod? Okay, so this guy really has some kind of little problem in his head if he thinks that you can do a standing wave without holding the other end, or I gotta, I guess, add that something holding the whole wave up. I mean, what is he saying? Is there a rod connecting every atom in the universe, and the wave moves over the rod? Is that what he's saying? Turns out that that wave machine was done, that's like a second generation. Here was the first generation. This was done by the British, okay? And it's the Royal Institution who produced this wave machine, okay? And they produced it in 2008. And here's their machine. And one of the first things they say there, as you can see, is that the machine sits on horizontal bars which are threaded together with wires. So it has something to hold it up. And here's the wave. Okay, you can see it there. It's being generated. And you know, again, you can see that the wave comes back over itself. Why? Because it's being held by a rod. So there is no such thing as a standing wave that doesn't have a rod underneath it, or is tied at the other end. One of the two has to happen. You can't have a wave without some kind of support. Okay. And then here's the reflection version of theirs, of this Vinicomb machine, a wave machine. You can see how it is. It's remember the wave is on the edges, by the way. Okay, so it's an optical illusion in a way, right? But yeah, you have to have some kind of rod. You can't do a wave without either holding the other ends, or putting a rod underneath. And if you put the rod, well, you got to explain what that rod is in terms of the transverse wave that people say that light is. So are they saying, or is this fellow saying that the transverse wave is held up by a rod? So yeah, he hasn't realized that. He didn't come through in his head. Okay, another comment here said, how the hell a field can be a concept? Talking primarily about a magnetic field. If a field has two types of shapes, lines and circles, it is not a concept, and it is not an object as physics wants to say. A field is a region in space, whatever that means, okay, which is holding potential to do work. Look at this figure. It looks like a concept if it is formed in front of your eyes. Well, again, the big problem here is people do not define their terms, and they think they can get away without defining terms. So we try to address this by starting at the beginning. We define what an object is. That way we can use the word consistently. What is an object? An object is that which has shape. Okay, it's got to be a standalone object. It should be the only object in the universe. That's how we should visualize objects. Okay. And if you go into at least the Wikipedia, here you get a definition of what a field is. Okay, it says a field is a physical quantity that has a value for each point in space. So field is a quantity, right? Or as in mathematics, it is a set, right? Then you're talking about an abstraction. You're not talking about a physical object. So, you know, if this fellow says, oh, I'm offended that you said that a field is not an object. Yeah, it's a concept. Field is a concept. It's just a bunch of numbers at each point in space. That's all it is. It's a region of numbers, not a region of things. And people don't understand that. They've used the word field for so many centuries now that, really for 2 centuries, that they do not realize they're dealing with a concept, okay? And here, let's show that it's a concept, okay? An object is a standalone object, like that blob that you see there, the white one. And in the second one, you see an angel, okay, with a halo, but it's not, the halo is not a standalone object. A halo, what we have, if it's standalone, it's just a ring, not a halo. Halo requires an angel. And likewise, the magnet, the field requires a magnet. Without the magnet, you don't have a standalone field. You cannot have a standalone field alone in the universe. You need to have something, some place where that field has origin. Okay, and people don't always understand that. You can't have a field without a magnet. Okay, and so let's see if I can get this other one here. Give me a second here. Here's a magnet underwater. You can see it's pulling each iron filing individually, one at a time. So you got to identify what makes up the field. There's something that's making up the so-called field. Field is just a region where all those magnets are moving, where all those iron filings are moving. There is no standalone object called field. Field is not only not a standalone object, but it's made of something that is in motion. A field is a dynamic concept. Okay? That's what it is. And people, again, because they don't define their terms, they don't know what they're talking about. And so just in case, we bring a little authority to bear, and that's from Mr. Faraday and Mr. Maxwell, and they said that, you know, a field is made of something, you know. Maxwell said, you know, it's in that space there's matter in motion, okay? And Faraday said, here it comes up, I cannot conceive curved lines of force without conditions of a physical existence. They knew that lines of force and that so-called field was mediated by something that was material, physical. It was an exotic kind of material or matter or whatever, but they couldn't figure that out. And so they said, well, it's matter in motion. What it is, I don't know, but it's matter in motion. So field is matter in motion. Matter in motion is a concept. It's not a standalone object, okay? So from every point of view, from any point of view, a field is not a physical object, standalone physical object. It's not independent. It's something in motion. It's something that's made of something that is in motion. From all those points of view, field is not an object. And I know that offends a lot of people, but I'm sorry, especially electricians who believe they're dealing with something and they fail to identify that something simply because they can't see or touch it. That's the only reason, really. Okay, another comment here. And this fellow said, when monochromatic laser light goes through a glass or prism, does it change color? And the answer is no. And here I've got a little picture to show that. Okay. Give me a second, I'll put it up here. Okay, you can see that monochromatic light going through a prism does break up, but it doesn't break up in colors. Okay, it doesn't break up in colors because it's made of a single frequency or wavelength. And so, if anything, it changes a little bit of color when it comes out, or when it goes. I'm sorry, when it goes through the prism, but it doesn't break up into colors like white light does. Okay. And then we had another comment here. Let me get this one out of the way. And it says, if you go to Fermilab's video, they explicitly state at 710, blah, blah, when one wave is moving at a different speed than the other one. Bill, this has nothing to do with amplitude. You lied. Well, see, the problem is the guy said speed. He said speed. It came out of his mouth, but that's not what he showed. Okay, so again, he just said it. He's the guy who lied, not me. This is what he showed, okay, and this is standard in the, anyone who knows anything about amplitude, okay. This is what he showed, something like this, and you can see that the speed here is the same for both waves. And you might say, well, is that true? Well, let me show it to you. See if I can get it up here. Okay, there it is. You can see that if you look at that edge there, you can see that the two waves are moving at the same speed. There is no difference in speed. What you have is just difference in wave amplitude. That's all you have. So the guy showed wave amplitude and said speed, and this guy bought it simply because the guy said speed. And he wasn't looking at what the guy was presenting. What the guy was presenting at the Fermi lab, and I showed that in a previous, 2 videos ago, was wave amplitude. That's what he talked about. And wave amplitude has nothing to do with speed. In fact, if you look at the equation, C equals frequency times wavelength, where do you see amplitude in that equation? Nowhere. So amplitude is what he showed, but amplitude has nothing to do with speed, but speed is what this guy said, and what he showed was amplitude. So again, you're wrong. You're wrong. You're the one who's lying, or you're being fooled by this fellow from Fermilab who makes lots of money and doesn't know the basics, doesn't know the fundamentals of what he's talking about. Anyways, with that, I'm going to continue on Wednesday, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye.